On Christmas night, December 25, President Trump ordered U.S. military strikes against ISIS targets in northwestern Nigeria, specifically in Sokoto State. The strikes involved Tomahawk missiles fired from a U.S. Navy vessel hitting two ISIS camps. The Pentagon later released video footage showing at least one missile launching from a warship. Here's where it gets interesting. Trump told reporters the strike had originally been planned for December 24, but he delayed it by a day to give a Christmas present to the terrorists, saying they didn't think that was coming, but we hit them hard. Every camp got decimated. That raises an immediate question. Was this timing strategic messaging, or was it about optics? Striking on Christmas Day in a religiously divided country carries heavy symbolism. Trump framed the strikes as retaliation for what he described as a systematic killing of Christians by ISIS militants. According to U.S. Africa Command, the operation killed multiple ISIS fighters and was carried out with full cooperation from the Nigerian government. Nigeria's foreign minister later revealed that he spoke with the U.S. Secretary of State twice, once for 19 minutes before the strike and briefly afterward, with the Nigerian president giving formal approval. This escalation didn't come out of nowhere. Since late October, Trump had been issuing increasingly aggressive warnings about what he called an existential threat to Christianity in Nigeria. In November, he warned that the United States would enter Nigeria guns a-blazing to protect Christian communities, and he designated Nigeria a country of particular concern for religious freedom violations. But the reality on the ground is far more complicated than Trump's framing suggests. According to crisis monitoring data, out of more than 20,400 civilian deaths between January 2020 and September 2025, only 317 deaths were from attacks specifically targeting Christians, while 417 deaths were from attacks targeting Muslims. In most cases, victims' religious affiliations were not recorded at all because the violence is driven by multiple overlapping factors: criminal banditry, ethnic tensions, land and resource disputes between farmers and herders, and yes, some jihadist activity. A Nigerian security analyst noted that framing the violence as primarily anti-Christian does not resonate with the reality on the ground, emphasizing that both Muslim and Christian communities suffer from the instability. This makes the location of the strikes particularly notable. The attacks hit Sokoto State in Nigeria's northwest, home to roughly 4 million people, the vast majority of whom are Muslim. When Trump and allied commentators have previously referenced a supposed Christian genocide in Nigeria, they typically point to central Nigeria's middle belt, not the northwest. Even more striking, reports indicate that at least one town affected by the strikes had residents claiming their village had never experienced an ISIS or ISO-linked attack, and no known ISIS cells were previously identified there. One local resident told reporters, "We have never experienced anything like this before," while calling on the government for protection. The Nigerian government maintains that the strikes targeted ISIS-linked elements, specifically citing an armed group known as Lakurawa, a relatively new and poorly understood group believed to have links to ISIS and possibly al-Qaeda affiliates. Analysts describe it as a hybrid crime-terrorism threat, blending jihadist ideology with organized banditry. Nigeria is clearly walking a diplomatic tightrope. While officials approved and supported the strikes, the foreign minister stressed that Nigeria's fight against armed groups is not driven by religion, whether Muslims or Christians, and irrespective of the type of terrorism. Notably, just before the strikes, the current Nigerian president released a Christmas message stating, "I stand committed to doing everything within my power to enshrine religious freedom in Nigeria and to protect Christians, Muslims, and all Nigerians from violence." Since the current administration took office in 2023, more than 10,000 people have been killed, hundreds abducted, and over 3 million displaced. Nigeria's crisis is massive and multidimensional, involving Boko Haram and its offshoots, ISIS-linked factions, criminal bandit groups, farmer-herder conflicts, ethnic rivalries, governance failures, and environmental-driven resource scarcity. Military analysts have pointed out that airstrikes alone mean little without a broader campaign. So far, there is little evidence of a comprehensive U.S. strategy beyond this single action. That raises a critical question. Are these strikes the beginning of sustained U.S. military involvement in Nigeria, or are they a one-off political statement? Reactions from religious leaders inside Nigeria have been mixed. Some Catholic figures welcomed action against extremist groups, while others questioned the religious framing of the strikes. One analyst warned that striking on Christmas Day in a Muslim-majority region risks reinforcing perceptions of a religiously motivated confrontation, even a renewed crusade narrative, potentially inflaming tensions rather than easing them. This situation exposes several troubling patterns. First, simplification for political purposes. Trump's framing of a Christian genocide does not align with available data or the complex drivers of violence in Nigeria. While Christians face real threats, so do Muslims, and much of the violence is not primarily religious. Second, unintended consequences. By framing the conflict in religious terms and striking on Christmas Day in a Muslim-majority region, the U.S. risks worsening the very divisions it claims to be addressing. Third, short-term thinking. Without a comprehensive approach addressing governance failures, economic desperation, and environmental pressures, military strikes may disrupt militant groups temporarily, but will not resolve Nigeria's security crisis. Fourth, sovereignty concerns. Although Nigeria approved the operation, weeks of public threats and rhetoric from Washington raise questions about the power dynamics involved and the pressure placed on Nigerian leaders. Here's what we know about the actual strike mechanics. The operation ran from 12:12 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. local time, with 16 GPS-guided precision munitions launched using Reaper drones, according to Nigeria's information minister. The targets were located in the Bounty Forest in the Tangaza area, described by officials as ISIS assembly and staging grounds used to plan large-scale attacks. During the operation, debris from expended munitions fell in two locations, one town in Sokoto State and another site in Afa, Kwara State, near a hotel. Nigerian officials stated that no civilian casualties were reported. But here's what's alarming. Residents in one affected town told reporters that their village had never experienced an ISIS or ISIL-linked attack, and that no known ISIS cells had ever operated there. One local resident described the moment the strike approached. As it came closer, the heat became intense. People in the area called on the government for protection, not from ISIS, but from further airstrikes. Meanwhile, the U.S. Defense Secretary posted a message hinting at escalation. More to come. Nigerian officials later confirmed that the strikes would be an ongoing process, potentially involving other countries, though no specifics were provided. So here's the central dilemma. If locals insist there was never ISIS activity in their area, while both governments claim these were legitimate ISIS camps, who do we believe? This is the fog of war at its most confusing. To understand why the strike occurred in Sokoto State specifically, you have to zoom out and look at the catastrophic security collapse across the entire Sahel region. And catastrophic is not an exaggeration. According to the 2025 Global Terrorism Index, the Sahel accounted for 19% of all terrorism attacks worldwide and 51% of all terrorism-related deaths in 2024, up from 48% the year before. In other words, half of all global terrorism deaths are now concentrated in this single region of Africa. Militant groups in the Sahel are no longer loosely organized insurgents.
Reports show they are conducting complex operations using drones, improvised explosive devices, and coordinated assaults involving large numbers of fighters against fortified military positions. These groups are evolving into highly capable armed forces. The group believed to be targeted in Nigeria is known locally as Lakurawa, an Islamic State Sahel province affiliate that expanded from southern Niger's Dosso region into northwestern Nigeria. Nigerian security researchers say communities now openly describe Lakurawa as more oppressive and dangerous than the bandits they claim to protect people from. The group is accused of killings, kidnappings, sexual violence, and armed robbery, and is believed to control territory in parts of Sokoto State. The complexity doesn't stop there. Nigeria is also facing cross-border attacks from militant Islamist groups entering from Benin, reflecting how violence in the Western Sahel has spilled southward from Mali into Burkina Faso and beyond. A major destabilizing event occurred in January when Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger formally withdrew from ECOWAS, the regional bloc meant to coordinate economic and security policy. All three countries are now governed by military juntas that seized power through coups and have formed a new alliance known as the Alliance of Sahel States. UN observers report that entire communities have been emptied across Burkina Faso, northern Mali, and western Niger, as violence between armed groups, intercommunal clashes, and military operations intensifies. This has produced mass displacement on a staggering scale. The 2023 coup in Niger is particularly relevant. Niger borders Sokoto State, where the strikes occurred. Nigerian military officials say Lakurawa has roots in Niger and became more active in Nigerian border communities after the coup fractured relations between the two countries and disrupted joint military operations along the porous frontier. This is the strategic nightmare. Porous borders, collapsed regional cooperation, military governments expelling Western forces, and jihadist groups exploiting every crack in the system. This isn't America's first involvement in Africa. The U.S. established Africa Command in 2007 and has long provided equipment, training, and intelligence support to countries like Benin, Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and Nigeria through multinational efforts such as the Lake Chad Basin Joint Task Force. The U.S. has also conducted airstrikes in Somalia for years against al-Shabaab and ISIS affiliates. In fact, just days before the Nigeria operation, U.S. forces carried out airstrikes on ISIS Somalia on December 22nd and December 23rd. So Nigeria fits into a broader pattern of U.S. counterterrorism operations across Africa. But there's a crucial difference. AFRICOM's long-standing doctrine emphasizes a light footprint, avoiding direct combat, focusing instead on training, intelligence sharing, and partner capacity building. Direct strikes inside Nigeria represent a major escalation from that approach. So what's your read? Is the U.S. being pulled deeper into another unwinnable conflict, or is this the kind of targeted intervention that actually works? Now, let's talk about the human cost. Nearly 28.7 million people across the Sahel will require life-saving humanitarian aid and protection in 2025. Since Nigeria's current president took office in 2023, more than 10,000 people have been killed, hundreds abducted, and over 3 million displaced. And the situation is deteriorating. The Lake Chad Basin experienced a 7% increase in militant-linked fatalities over the past year, with nearly 4,000 deaths, highlighting the continued resilience of Boko Haram and ISIS-linked factions. At the same time, humanitarian funding has collapsed. By May, only 8% of the required $4.3 billion in aid had been received, forcing agencies to scale back assistance to millions of vulnerable people. So, while Tomahawk missiles are being launched, millions are starving, and global humanitarian engagement is fading. Nigeria's foreign minister has stated that the strikes will be an ongoing process, possibly involving other foreign partners. That suggests Nigeria may be opening the door to sustained foreign military operations on its territory. But that raises a fundamental problem. Militant groups in the Sahel are shifting strategy, embedding themselves in communities, asserting territorial control, offering rudimentary governance, and cultivating local legitimacy where states have failed. You can't drone strike your way out of that. When armed groups begin to function as governing actors, the solution becomes political, not purely military. So here's the question nobody seems to be asking. What comes after more to come? Is this strike number 1, strike number 10, or the opening phase of a multi-year air campaign? Because history tells us how that story often ends. Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Yemen. Nigeria is stepping into dangerous territory. On one hand, its military is overstretched and desperate for assistance. On the other, analysts warn that framing the violence in binary religious terms risks inflaming divisions in a country already fractured along political, ethnic, and religious lines. Nigeria's government insists the fight is not religious, that it's about protecting all Nigerians. But when the U.S. president frames the mission as protecting Christians and launches strikes on Christmas Day in a Muslim-majority region, the messaging problem becomes Nigeria's problem. Final thoughts. This is a perfect storm. A real security crisis, oversimplified political narratives, regional collapse, humanitarian catastrophe, and now direct U.S. military intervention. The strikes may have killed ISIS fighters. They may have also just helped recruit the next generation. So where does this go next? Is the real story the regional security meltdown, the domestic political risks for Nigeria, or the precedent this sets for future U.S. interventions in Africa? Because whichever one you choose, this isn't over.